Hi, in this presentation I'm going to talk about human trafficking and slavery and why such acts still happening in present day. Moreover, who is responsible for this? Based on the current situations on such acts happen in Australia, how the government and other stakeholders should do to stop the human trafficking and slavery. Human trafficking and slavery are part of black international business. Black international business is mainly a generalization of all kinds of illegal or acceptable legal activities. But because the legal and moral values vary from place to place, human trafficking and slavery are still legal in some countries. The history of slavery can be traced back to the 1600s when a series of slavery activities of Honorable East India Company began to be the embryonic form of human trafficking. Until 1990s, organized documents and research of human trafficking and slavery starts appears. Human trafficking can also be defined as modern slavery. It refers to how people use intimidations, violence, or deceptions to make someone participate in labor or business practice. Today, this phenomenon shows no signs of going away. Until 2018, 40.3 million people were still persecuted by human trafficking and slavery. The lack of transparency in commercial production chains is providing opportunities for human trafficking. If a production process is subject to slavery is too difficult to determine in countries with well-established legal systems, then it's easier for traffickers to carry out human trafficking activities in countries with imperfect legal framework. Traffickers can use legal operation rules to cover up labor exploitations. Moreover, the government definitions of trafficking involving the exploitations of labor is very vague, allowing companies to work in a gray area to avoid corresponding legal responsibilities. Besides, the vast commercial benefits brought by human trafficking and slavery are also one of the main reasons. Globally, human trafficking is a 32 billion industries. At the same time, in the context of global economic competitions, enterprises carry out human trafficking activities to pursue low labor costs and reduce production costs. Victims' fear of their own poverties and lack of understanding of human rights educations are also important reasons. They are not seeking help because they are afraid of losing their jobs. Especially in developing countries, the darkness of employment prospects makes victims willing to accept oppressions rather than return to their own countries. The traffickers should be responsible for human trafficking. Traffickers are often supported by business. Although the current fight against human trafficking has increased, but the determination of traffickers to profit from forced labor has led to the persistence of human trafficking. Governments are also responsible for human trafficking. Ironically, human trafficking is increasing a legitimate business under political umbrellas. Due to the lack of government's policies on human trafficking, corruption, and not enough efforts on rescuing the victims that has led to the problem of human trafficking not being addressed effectively. I agree that human trafficking and slavery still happen in Australia. Although Australia has regulations on transparencies of cooperative supply chains. However, due to the lack of cooperation from private companies, the regulations are still difficult to implement. Human trafficking and slavery are also difficult to detect in Australia because of inadequate reporting of victims. Only 1 in 5 victims is identified. Traffickers often use the victims unfamiliarly with local laws to blackmail them into not reporting their employers' illegal behavior. The Labour Party pointed out that since 2014, about 80,000 people apply for asylum, but only 10% of them are real refugees. It is because Australia is not enough to supervise the processing of immigration applications. Criminals can use the loophole of different immigration visas to inveigle victims to come to Australia. In past cases, only a few people have been convicted in past 170 prosecutions of human trafficking. Due to the lack of research on human trafficking in Australia, the Australian government has not enough prevalent data to establish effective preventive measures and legal treaties. Therefore, although Australia has a relative legal framework for human trafficking, but effort on stopping human trafficking is still disappointing. Australian government should pay more attention on establish an effective legal execution force to prevent such acts. The United Nations and its member states hope to eliminate human trafficking by 2030, but only a few countries have ratified the United Nations Forced Labor Agreements. Because of the difference in political systems make it difficult for countries to agree on the piece of effort to stop their own human trafficking and slavery. The government should improve provisions that identify trafficking and promote the creation and enforcement of labor protection laws, such as the Federal Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Also, strengthen inspections on borders of import and export to prevent the circulation of products produced through slave labor. In addition, government needs to provide workers with safe migration process and remedy so that the oppressed worker willing to report slave labors and human trafficking. It can effectively combat traffickers and provide data for future study so that the government can improve and modify the legal provision to stop human trafficking in the future. At the same time, multinational enterprises should consciously abide by the relevant laws, make detailed reports for the material resource of supply chains, support the establishment of trade unions within the enterprise, and establish relevant codes of conduct so the union reports and union representatives can be effectively monitored as third party. In conclusion, because of the huge commercial benefits and the lack of effort to combat it, human trafficking and slavery is still existing. The perfection of the law and the promotion of cooperation among various countries still have a long way to go.